man on the deck of the yacht and offered me champagne. "Welcome aboard, my lady." I smiled awkwardly. "Where is everybody else?" "They're all waiting for us out at the island." I stayed back to give you a ride. I froze because I thought I was supposed to sail out with all the other girls. He put his hand out and I took it. Stood up on deck, saw a huge spread of food and a stocked bar. You remembered all of my favorites. I remember everything you tell me. That's weird because we've barely spoken in 5 years. It's strange that Carly didn't text me to let me know. I told her that you were good with me taking you out to her birthday party. Trust me, my yacht's way nicer than the dingy ferry they were on. He smiled, stared at me for way too long, then sailed the yacht out to the open ocean towards the party island. The sun was starting to set over the horizon when Adrian sat a little too close. "I want to share something deeply personal with you." I fidgeted with my phone. No cell service. The memory of my mother leaving me when I was 9 haunts me to this day. I'm terrified to ever feel that way again. I still can't watch anyone pack a suitcase without getting choked up. I took a gulp of champagne. He touched my bracelet. I'm really careful who I let in because I have a lot of women that want me, which makes me really picky. A true connection should feel organic and magical, kind of like what we could have. I stared ahead and stayed quiet, wishing the yacht could go faster. I was so relieved when we came up alongside the party island, but then he sped right past it. "Where are you going?" "Chill. The sun sets in 5 minutes and I know another spot to watch it from that will make your heart stop and your panties drop." He laughed. I turned cold. "Relax. It's just a joke." We sailed a few hundred yards away to another small deserted island and docked at an inlet with no lights. We stepped out onto the pink sand and he laid out a blanket with wine, strawberries, and chocolate. "This place is only for people who understand what real exclusivity means. Only the privileged elite get to experience this. I wanted to get this over with as soon as possible." "Wow, great sunset. You ready to go?" "You haven't even tried a strawberry." We watched the sun go down, and then he shifted closer to me on the blanket. I felt his thigh touch mine and he gently caressed my arm. "You good?" I moved away. "Yeah, I'm good." "Are you sure? Because just a few seconds ago, you were leaning up against me all flirty, and now you're being a little standoffish. I mean, I wouldn't have brought you somewhere this private if I wasn't picking up a very strong vibe that this was mutual. I don't know what gave you that idea, but I'm not interested in you like that." He stood up, aggressively wiped sand off of his pants, walked a few feet away, and turned his back to me. The silence stretched out, and I felt the air turn cold. "You know what's genuinely frustrating? False advertising. I didn't advertise anything. You loved the yacht. You loved the champagne and the chocolate and all the attention. You came out here acting all excited and happy, and then you give me some 'I'm not interested' bullshit. Yeah, okay, let's just go to your sister's party." I stood up, started walking back towards the yacht. He stepped directly into my path and got right in my face. When I looked into his eyes, I saw a very different person. Cold, calculated, and deliberate. I understood in that moment that everything on the yacht, the food, the questions, the crafted vulnerability, had all been manufactured. "We're not leaving just yet." I slowly backed away, then turned to run. He quickly closed the distance and tackled me face first into the sand. He straddled me, flipped me over to face him, and put his hands around my neck. I like it when they fight me. I kneed him as hard as I could between his legs, squirmed out from underneath him, and took off running. He clutched onto his groin and turned red. I looked back and saw him casually stand up. He started chasing me. "You're a lot safer with me right here than out there all alone, but don't take my word for it." I hit the tree line and kept going. There was still no reception on my phone, but I flipped on the flashlight and used it to navigate through the thick, dark brush. My dad's voice popped in my head. "The terrain is always on your side if you know how to use it." My dad had taken me camping every summer since I was a little girl. Not glamping, real camping. How to read the ground, how to move without sound, how to make yourself invisible in an environment that wasn't built for comfort. I hadn't thought about any of that in years, but it was quickly coming back to me. I made it to the rocky shoreline on the far side of the island, where the ground broke up into a field of uneven coastal rocks sitting over shallow water. I slowed down and started stepping across them, one at a time, testing each one for stability. He came up behind me near the tree line, saw me, and sped up. My dad's voice rang out again. "Predators hate uncertainty." I hopped from rock to rock, luring him to follow me. He smiled as if he was enjoying the hunt, and stepped onto the jagged rocks. He was getting cocky. Then his foot slid into a gap, dragged across a ridge of sharp surface coral on the way down, sliced open his thigh, and crashed into the water. He lost his arrogant smile and clutched onto the wound. I made it to the sand on the other side of the rocks and looked back. He was struggling to pull himself out of the water and was clutching onto his leg. "That's a pretty nasty cut. Hope it doesn't get infected." "You think this is a game? I will find you. And when I do, you'll beg me to stop." I kept running. About 30 seconds later, my vision blurred. My legs went wobbly beneath me, and I stumbled down to one knee. The trees were pulsing at the edges. I steadied myself. Shit, he drugged the champagne. I knew it looked a little too thick and cloudy. I had no choice but to hide and wait it out. I stumbled towards a fallen tree in a dense patch of brush and dug into the dirt underneath it. I clawed my fingernails deep into the mud, made a hole just big enough to barely fit in, and completely covered myself. I placed some dry leaves on top and closed my eyes. Stay awake. Stay alert. I fought as hard as I could, but I passed out. The next however many hours were surreal fragments, branches turning into colors, sounds coming from way too many directions. I had no idea how much time had passed when I was abruptly awoken by the sound of footsteps crunching down on leaves. I looked up and saw him, standing a few feet away. I sucked in a long, deep breath and closed my eyes. God? Help me out on this one, will ya? Then he shifted over to where I was and was faced me. I struggled to stay as still as possible as the sound of his footsteps got closer and closer. Then I felt a sharp pain on my forearm. I opened up one eye and saw him standing right on top of me. I'm busted. I heard him breathing above me, heavy and labored from his wound. I felt drops of the warm blood from his leg trickle down onto my cheek. It took everything in me to hold every muscle still and not breathe. He stepped forward, and his full weight came down on my stomach. The pain shot up, and I gritted my teeth so hard I thought they'd crack. He stood there for a long moment, then he moved on. I didn't exhale for another 10 seconds, just in case he was still close. When I felt like I was in the clear, the drug had thinned out just enough for me to be able to walk. I stood up, took 2 steps, and was still really woozy. I spent the next hour and a half circling back toward the inlet, moving slowly through the trees. I must have gotten lost because I came up to a small wooden shed and froze. Is he in there? The door to the shed swung open and I lunged back. A squirrel shuffled out. He wasn't inside, so I stepped in and saw a stranger's fishing equipment, spotted a small knife and pocketed it. I made my way back to the yacht, checking every shadow from behind trees. The yacht was still there. He wasn't, or at least I couldn't see him. I boarded carefully, searched every room and found nothing. Then I stood at the controls and stared at a dashboard that meant absolutely nothing to me. I started pressing buttons. Some of them did things I didn't understand. Some of them did nothing. One of them, eventually, started the engine. I managed to pull away from the dock with no idea what I was doing and didn't care. I got 100 yards out onto open water and let myself cry for about 4 seconds. Then I heard him screaming out from the shore and saw him sprint across the beach, dive into the water at full speed, and start swimming directly for me. I pressed several other buttons, desperately trying to go faster, but it did the opposite and killed the engine. I pressed the start button in a panic, but it wasn't turning on. By the time the engine finally kicked in, he was already climbing up the yacht. I kicked at his hands, but that didn't slow him down. He was coming up, and there was nothing I could do about it. So I sprinted into the main cabin, and as I turned a corner, my ankle caught on the edge of the door frame and sent me crashing down. I grimaced in agony and saw that my ankle was facing the wrong direction. I crawled back up, hopped on one leg. My ankle burned, but I could still move it, so it was most likely sprained and not broken. I locked the door, pulled open every drawer I could find, and saw $500